Yomi 2 is a tabletop card game that's based on fighting games. And I'm going to tell you a feature of Yomi 2, which is called gems. Now, I don't mean those sparkly, beautiful bits that come in the board game Puzzle Strike 2. What I mean is that when you pick your character, you also pick a gem, which is a set of cards that lets you adjust or customize your character a bit. I'll tell you how it works. I'll tell you why it's designed that way and how it affects casual play, as well as how it affects expert play. And then I'll go over some of the specifics of all of the actual gem cards. There are 6 different gems to choose from in the Road to Morningstar set, and that's the main set to get in Yomi 2. You also get 2 copies of all those, so if one player wants the red gem and another player also wants the red gem, you're able to do that. There's also the same 6 gems in the Shadows over Flagstone set, and then in the Bashing versus Finesse set, there's actually 2 other gems, so there's really 8 in total if you count those extra 2. Each gem is really 5 cards. The first 2 cards are 2 special moves that you add to your character's deck. The third card is an ability that you add to your character's deck. The fourth is a burst, which is a very fast attack that has some extra effect when it hits that you add to your character's deck. And then the 5th card, you don't actually add that one to your deck. It is a Gem Storm. It's a card that sits on the table the whole game, and you can activate it any turn that you want, and it will last 2 turns and give you an exciting effect for those 2 turns. You can't activate it if your opponent's Gemstorm is active though, so you might choose to activate yours just to block the opponent from doing it for a little bit. So that's what picking a gem means, but why does it work that way, and why even have this feature? In most fighting games, you don't customize your character at all, and that's fine. I think this game would also have worked without gems. It was just an experiment to see if we give you a way to adjust your character a little bit, is that more fun? And in all the playtesting I did, the answer was definitely yes. People really liked it. So that's why to have it at a very basic level. I'll get into the specifics for casual players versus expert players in just a minute, but I want to talk about why this level of customization. Why not more? Why not less? I find that when you have too little customization, like if all you did was add 1 card to your deck or something, that it doesn't tend to work very well. It tends to be a false choice. There's this 1 card that's going to be better than the others, and that's the one you should always add. You really need more customization than that. Like if you could add at least a few cards for there to be more trade-offs, and it just becomes a lot easier to balance when you have more to work with than just like one tiny little thing. So when customization is adding a bundle of a few things, that works better for balance, but it's also way more interesting and way more fun. It means that the designer can create a theme and a coherent experience behind each bundle of options. So you find that each gem has a personality or at least a little bit of theme that makes it interesting and stand apart from the others. What about going the other direction where there could be way, way, way more customization, perhaps? Well, there's a couple problems with that and 2 reasons why I didn't think that made sense for Yomi 2. First, to keep with the fighting game theme, I think it makes more sense if the bulk of what you're playing is a character, is a coherently designed character that's maybe changed up a little bit by these gem choices, but not a complete Frankenstein mess of who knows what moves all thrown together. I mean, how would you even illustrate that well? But there's also a key point about balance. It's just a general thing in really any game, but especially any competitive game. And it is this principle that the more customization you offer the player, actually, the fewer choices they have, or at least the fewer viable competitive choices they have. Now, that could sound confusing because isn't that backwards? I mean, the more customization you offer, wouldn't that mean the more choices? But no, not really. So let me break that down. The actual way that these gems work in Yomi 2, there's 6 in the main set, or there's these 2 extras. So you could say there's 8 in total. If I ask you to balance those gems, I could start by saying, well, why don't you come up with a power level, just like one number that describes how powerful each gem is. You might say, well, you need more than that because maybe a gem is good against some characters and not good against others. So I know there's some nuances there, but just to ease the conversation, just to simplify it a bit, you could come up with one power level number for each one. And then if one of them was too weak, we could work on that. We could buff it. We could adjust it. We could watch players, look at their games and see, Are they really using all 8 of these? Are they each, seeing enough play? And it is reasonably likely that we could get all 8 to be used. And if we did a bad job, maybe only 7 of them would be used, or 6 or something. But at least there'd be 6, even if we did kind of a bad job. Hopefully we did like a really good job though. Now let's say we went way farther with customization. Like there were 200 gem cards and you could pick any 5 and add those to your character. Do you know how many possibilities that would be? There's actually billions of combinations. So now if I ask you to make a spreadsheet where there's billions of rows, and by each one of those, you put your number of how powerful is that combination. Well, billions of those are going to be too weak to use. And then some, or one maybe, are going to be just astronomically powerful, crazily more powerful than all the rest. You probably would end up with really only one choice. If you ended up with 2, that would be really lucky. If you ended up with 3 that could all be picked competitively, that would be surprising if you had that many. But there's no way you're going to end up with 6 or 8. It's like practically impossible. And you wouldn't even be able to test it either, because you would sort of have an idea of how you think it's going to shake out. But then once it's released to the public, then they would learn, oh, actually, there's only 1 or maybe 2 viable choices. I like to make systems with lots of good, real options in competitive play rather than billions of kind of throwaway choices that's going to boil down to just 1 or 2 things. And so that's why I went with just these 8 gems where we can put a lot of effort into making sure all of them are distinct and interesting and good. I want to talk about the difference between casual players using these gems and really hardcore experts. So before I even designed any of this, I knew with really high certainty that casual players were going to like this. And then it turns out with all the testing we've done, they do. It's very straightforward. It's easy to understand. You give someone a character and then you let them change it a little bit, and they tend to like that. Whereas a hardcore player might be satisfied with playing one character hundreds of times and having no variation. Usually people who are a little more casual, they value that variation. They value the idea that they could play a character and then change it a little bit and have a little bit of a different experience. So that went exactly as I thought it would, but it's a bit of a different story for the expert players. My belief years ago when crafting this system was that I thought it didn't really matter how well balanced everything was for the following point. If it was the best balanced game in the history of the world, that even then my expectation was that the experts would probably say, oh, well, on this character, you can only ever use this one gem. And on this other character, you can only ever use this other gem. That even if there was like the tiny, 0.1% advantage of one gem over the other, that they would say, oh, that's the only one to ever pick. The others are all garbage. And they would say that there really isn't any choice at this high level. I figured we were just kind of doomed for that, and that it was worth it to give the casual players what they wanted anyway, even if the competitive high-end game turned out to be, you always pick this gem with this character. But with actual testing over the course of years, it turned out way better than I had ever hoped. So first, it isn't even true that the expert players all have consensus of, oh, you should only ever pick this one gem and this one character. Usually there's at least 2, sometimes 3, or even more reasonable choices at the competitive level for most characters. So there's kind of a lot of variety even just to begin with. But there's another element that really, really turned out better than I expected, and that is counterpicking. Imagine you're playing a series of games against someone. And also further imagine that maybe your character is at a little bit of a disadvantage, not too much, but a little bit. And then you happen to lose the first game. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you could switch something around about your character to make it a little bit stronger in this matchup so you had a better chance of winning game 2? That would be really nice. But if you lose, can you really change your character around enough to make a difference if you're only switching out a few cards, one gem for another? Well, it turns out that it is enough. It really is quite a significant thing to change gems in game 2 of a set. So I think we got pretty lucky that the impact of gems was really just the right amount. It's not too much, but it is just enough to affect these counterpicks. We're kind of getting in the weeds here, but it is an interesting and sort of weird point that if you lose the first game and then you switch gems to have a better chance, but then you win and then I switch gems, we might wonder, well, can I just completely nullify whatever benefit you had? And we're kind of where we started off. And it turns out that isn't really true either. Actually, the net effect of all this counterpicking is it brings all the matchups a little bit closer. And that's the part that I'm saying really turned out better than I could have hoped for. So it turns out that the experts who are really deep into this game like the gems a lot. They don't see it as just, oh, you pick one character and this gem is staple to them forever. They say that there are several choices and there's way more once you factor in all of the counterpicking, and that it really makes for kind of a rich metagame situation. So, whew. All right, well, let's go over the actual gems really quickly. First, there is red. Red is about just doing a bunch of damage. The 2 special moves you get are fireballs, they're projectiles, and just these alone are really helpful to have. Projectiles are pretty strong. They let you build up your hand by doing them several times. You also get an ability that just straight up damages the opponent, no questions asked. You get a burst that, well, bursts normally do only 1 damage, but yours does a bunch of extra damage. And then you have a gem storm that puts the opponent in a really awkward situation where if they do this, they take some damage. If they do this other thing, they take some damage. If they do a third thing to try to avoid taking damage, then you can just counter that and you can actually force them to take damage one way or the other. So you can create a late game checkmate situation. That's one use of that storm. Green is the power of growth and super moves. You get 2 special moves that are these rhinos that have armor. They are really strong. Your ability card lets you do extra damage for a turn, but it also gives you a super card. Your burst fills your whole super meter to full if you hit with it. And your storm is especially crazy. It lets you play super moves without paying any super meter cost, and you actually gain a meter whenever you play a super. Blue is the power of control. You get 2 special moves, these spears that are very fast reversal attacks, and usually those kinds of things would be unsafe on blocks. If the opponent blocked them, they could hit you back, but they cannot do that with these spears. You get an ability that is completely crazy. It is probably the strongest ability in the entire game. Makes the opponent skip their main phase and also skip their draw phase for 1 turn, which is absolutely crippling. If your burst hits, you get to draw a card and knock down the opponent, which is kind of a minor perk. And your blue gemstorm disables throws for 2 turns. The black gem is all about life drain. For special moves, you get 2 special throws that are extremely fast and beat most other throws in the game. And they do pretty good damage, but they also heal you. So the total amount of life spread for landing just one of those throws is absolutely enormous. Your ability card will drain 2 super meter from the opponents. Your burst also makes the opponent lose 1 super meter if you hit with it. And it also makes them discard 2 cards, which can be really crippling if you manage to hit them with that when they already are at a low hand size. And the black gemstorm gives you an opportunity to tack on some extra damage and extra healing for 2 turns. The white gem is all about drawing cards, and drawing cards is a really, really powerful thing to do in just about any card game, including this one. And so that's why it doesn't do many other things. The 2 special moves you get are 2 pretty fast attacks, and they're also linkers, which means they're really good to put into combos. And they can draw a card and sometimes even give you an extra meter of super as well. If you hit with a white burst, you get to draw 2 cards. The ability basically lets you cycle through cards to find the ones that you need. And the white gemstorm gives you an opportunity to draw 2 extra cards a turn, as long as you hit the opponent on those turns. The purple gem is a little tricky. It's if you want to try hard and make some synergies line up. The 2 special moves you get are dodges. Normally, when you use a dodge, if you dodge a projectile attack, you're not able to actually hit the opponent back. But these special purple gem dodges, they can hit the opponent back even if you dodge projectiles. And on top of that, whenever you dodge an attack, be it a projectile or a strike, you get to return a special move or ability card from your discard pile to your hand. So you can get some extra uses out of some other cards if you dodge correctly. The purple ability lets you improve your hand quality by digging for a certain card that you need. The purple burst uses the same concept as that purple dodge card, and that if you hit with the burst, you get to put any 2 cards you want from your discard pile back into your hand. And the purple gemstorm gives you 2 perks on each of the 2 turns that it lasts. On each of those turns, you get the edge and you get more combo points. So what that means is that your moves are going to be a little bit faster than normal on each of those turns. And also, if you are doing a combo, you're able to do a little bit bigger of a combo on those 2 turns. The orange gem is about strength and a little bit of healing. The two special moves you get are moves that can knock down, and it's really easy to add this move to the end of just about any combo. So landing the knockdown is very common with the orange gem. The orange ability lets you heal yourself. The orange burst does something unique in all of the game. If you hit with it, it will replenish your gemstorm. Usually you can only do one gemstorm per game, but you can use the orange gemstorm, then hit with the orange burst, and then you can do a second orange gemstorm. So what does the orange gemstorm do? Well, something really crazy. For those 2 turns, it makes all of your normal attacks unblockable, armored. They also draw a card on hit, but the drawback is you can't combo any specials or supers. So it's got to be a combo of all just normal attacks. And finally, the diamond gem has many different effects, kind of a prism of effects, if you will. The 2 special moves you get are blocks, but they're really great blocks. Normally, a block is either a high block or a low block, but these special diamond blocks are able to block high and low at the same time. The diamond ability card lets you get 2 special moves from your discard pile to your hand, so that could be really strong depending on what your character's special moves are. If you hit with the diamond burst, you get 1 super meter and you get to draw a card. And the diamond storm is also very crazy, and sort of like the orange storm, it has an interaction with the burst. If you recall, the orange gem is the only one that got to do the gem storm twice, but the diamond gem is the only one that gets to burst twice. The diamond storm says that when you activate it, first you fetch your burst from your discard pile to your hand. So if you played it earlier, that's fine. You're going to get to play it again. And also for these 2 turns, your burst does an additional 20 damage if you hit with it, which is totally crazy. So there you go. That's the story of gems in Yomi 2. At the time of this video, the game is crowdfunding on GameFound, so you can go to their site. There's a link in the description below to support the project and help bring it to life. And if the crowdfunding went well and you're watching this video later, then you can check out surlingames.com to find Yomi 2.